All right, basement. It's just you and me. I refuse to believe there is a curse on this basement, although that punching bag in there does look shockingly like a ghost. Let's do this. Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always, incredible folks at Nerd Tees, and welcome to week 19 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2019 CFL regular season and postseason. We are down in the basement yet again, and let's see if Wednesday evening picks have some better luck than our Tuesday evening ones. Second time this season, last week that we were down here, and second time the picks were a little bit underwater yet again. Only 5-7 in our picks last week for the CFL, 2-2 straight up, and 2-2 on the totals, but an uncharacteristic 1-3 against the spread. That only has us 47-22 straight up, 41-27-1 against the spread, and 33-36 on our totals, 121, 85, and 1 on the season for all of our CFL picks. That's 58.45%, and it is just below, basically across the board, exactly where I want to be. So, you know what? We're getting close to the end of the regular season. It's got to pick up now or never. Biggest change from last week to this week is we now know the 6 teams who will represent the CFL in the postseason. In the East Division, we've got Hamilton and Montreal. In the West, we have Calgary, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, who clinched the final playoff spot, basically the Eastern crossover spot. And in all likelihood, they'll be going to Montreal in the first round. Those are your 6 playoff teams. Since we're a little pressed for time, I'm going to push the fantasy football stuff to the end of the episode. You can just see in that screen grab who I've chosen on my fantasy football team. That's going to be at the end of the video. We're going to go right into our games this week. I want to get this video done as quickly as possible. You've already waited a few extra hours for it. Our week 19 schedule looks like this. Toronto is visiting Montreal. Argos and the Owls. Saski is visiting BC. You got the Riders and the Lions. Ottawa is in Hamilton. REDBLACKS versus Ticats. And Winnipeg is in Calgary. That closes the week. Arguably the game of the week. Bombers visiting the Stamps. Let's start with that Toronto-Montreal matchup. The Argos winners last week, picking up just their 3rd win of the season. That was a 28-21 victory at home against Ottawa. And they held off a 4th quarter rally there where the REDBLACKS, I think, scored 11 points in the 4th quarter. You probably heard the freezer turn off. So they hold off that rally. They get their 3rd win of the season in Mike Pinball Clemens' GMing debut. A 300-yard passing game from McLeod Bethel Thompson, 170 of those 300 yards going to S.J. Green. Massive game for S.J. Green last week. But the main story here, 18 touches for James Wilder Jr. Finally, you ate your meat and you're allowed to have your pudding. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? It's an old reference. Look it up. Hell, the Argos defense even actually looked like a professional football defense in that game. 4 quarterback sacks on Will Arndt, 3 interceptions on Will Arndt, who again I said should have gotten the start for the REDBLACKS, and I do stick to that. This basically unequivocally proves that Toronto is not the worst team in the CFL. That is definitely the REDBLACKS. Montreal basically been treading water for the last 5 or 6 weeks. They dropped a 35-24 decision in Winnipeg last week, and it was an uncharacteristic 4 interception performance from Vernon Adams that basically buried that team and buried what was a winnable football game for the Owls. Vernon Adams had only thrown 1 interception since week 14 prior to that game last week. The Owls even had the lead in this game, 17-15, early in the second half. But again, Winnipeg winds up reeling off 13 points off of those second half interceptions. And again, Vernon Adams just did not look himself in the second half of that football game. And that included a pick 6 from Winnipeg's Nick Taylor. But in a way, that game could be good for Montreal. That game has to be a lesson because within the context of just that one game, Montreal got to see glimpses of who they used to be, which is a defense that gives up 35 points a game, 4 interceptions from the quarterback position, just a game that does not go well. They saw glimpses of the team they used to be, and they did some good things in that game too. So they saw glimpses of the team they are trying to become, and in a lot of ways have taken steps towards becoming this season. So this game, I hope the notes from this game were meticulous, because Montreal needs to learn from it. Another thing the Als need to do is round into playoff form. They know not only are they going to the playoffs, they're going to have a home playoff game. They need to round into form, and they got a pretty darn good opportunity here. I'm not going to take Toronto to win this game on the road. We're going to go with the Montreal Alouettes at home. This is a team that Montreal absolutely has to beat, and I believe they will. Alouettes at home beat the Argos. On the line, Montreal is a 10.5-point favorite against Toronto. And at first I was like, man, that's a lot of points again for a Montreal team that offensively and defensively have really just treaded water for the last month and a half. They haven't exactly been, they've been scoring their points, but they've certainly been giving up too many. But I think, feel that this number is at least a little bit justified, enough so that I think I'm going to lay the points on it, and I think I am going to take the Alouettes minus 10.5 points. This is a team that Montreal needs to beat by 2 or 3 possessions. This is a team that has not been good this season, is not going to the playoffs. This is a chance for the defense to test itself against an offense that can put up yardage and put up points, and they showed they could do it last week. So this is a game that Montreal absolutely has to control. I think they will. Let's lay the points. Alouettes minus 10.5. Total in the game set at 53 points. I think this is pretty close to a perfect total, but both defenses over their last 4 games respectively are giving up at least 29 points a game. Montreal's giving up 29, Toronto's giving up 35. So these are 2 defenses that are certainly allowing their points. I think the number will go over by a couple of points, right around a mid-50 something. So let's take that and let's go over 53 points in Montreal-Toronto. Let's go to BC now. Lions hosting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Saski on the losing end last week of that 2-point decision in Calgary against the Stampeders. And that was a back and forth game that certainly seemed to tick all the boxes as far as I'm concerned for a preview of the West Division Final. The Riders got down early by allowing basically what amounts to an onside kick to be returned for a touchdown after the Stampeders had taken a 3-1 lead off of a field goal, but a Nick Marshall first half pick 6 kind of negated that, and the game stayed very close from there on out. Of note, William Powell, a pair of touchdowns in this game, 1 rushing and 1 receiving. In my eyes, this game came down to a quarterback matchup, and Cody Fajardo simply could not outduel Bo Levi Mitchell in that game. And, it's full credit to the Calgary defense, but Cody Fajardo had 6 of his passes knocked down in that game, and it was throughout the entirety of the game. That indicates to me not only, obviously, that Calgary's defense is really good, which obviously we've known that all year, but that Fajardo's not getting those passes in there quick enough. And in a game where you have to outduel a gunslinger like Bo Levi Mitchell, you got to get your passes in there. You can't allow those passes to be put in positions where they're going to be knocked down by defenders. He didn't do that effectively enough in the football game. That's a big reason why they lost. The BC Lions may now be able to lay claim to the saddest story in the CFL this season. BC not only dropping a 19-6 decision in Edmonton that cost them the playoffs and sent Edmonton to the playoffs, but the reason that happened, Mike Riley goes down with a broken wrist after, I think, attempting something like 3 passes in that game. Danny O'Brien came in at the backup quarterback position, only threw for 52%, 103 yards passing, and threw an interception. Danny O'Brien's not going to be enough to get it done, obviously, and he didn't get it done within the context of the game. BC's out. And that loss was nothing short of cataclysmic for the BC Lions and their fans. That's such a crushing loss when you look at how this team started, how they've been playing lately, and the path that they legitimately had to potentially pulling off this big underdog story and catching the Eskimos, who are without their top quarterback, and sneaking into the playoffs in the last week or 2 of the season. They were right there to do it. This game was the watershed game, and then that has to happen to Mike Riley. Obviously, Riley's out for the rest of the season, and I just genuinely feel bad for the BC Lions. I really do. This is back-to-back road games for the Riders, which I think would make a difference if Mike Riley was in at quarterback. It's not Mike Riley, it's Danny O'Brien. Riders should roll in this football game, and that's the way I'm going to go with it. Let's take Saskatchewan on the road in BC to beat the Lions. On the line, the Lions are 7-point dogs at home. So what Vegas is telling me is that I only have to lay a touchdown on the team that I think is going to win the Grey Cup. This might be the first time I've actually said that. I think the Riders are going to win the Grey Cup. I only have to lay a touchdown on that team against a BC team that doesn't have Mike Riley. Thank you very much. We're going to lay those points. We're going to take Saskatchewan minus the 7 points in BC. Total in the game is set at 47 points. I personally have this capped at like a high 40, approaching 50. I could very easily see this game reaching 50. I think Sasky is going to flex some serious offensive muscle in this game. So we are going to go with the over in that one. Let's go over 47 points in Saskatchewan, BC. And before we move on to the back half of the Week 19 games, I will take this opportunity, as I always do, to shout out and pump the tires of my wonderful friends at NerdTees, nerdtees.ca. Hit that promo code BWFinest, and you are going to save the 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $75. Or if you're one of my viewers in the United States, shout out to my US CFL fans, you get a great conversion rate on the US dollar by visiting nerdtees.ca, where one of the wonderful blends that you can pick up is Kiwilicious, which is what I'm drinking right now. Just reminds me of summer. So tasty, smells so good. Nerdtees.ca. Use the promo code BWFinest. Save your money. Get your free shipping. Get your conversion rate. Find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love just in time for Christmas. You can do it at nerdtees.ca. All right, we're going to spend very little time talking about our next game because it's Ottawa in Hamilton. Ottawa has lost 8 consecutive games, including dropping a 7-point decision in Toronto last week, and you don't lose 8 straight games by accident. This is just a bad football team, especially when 2 of those 8 games were against Toronto. Will Arndt, I am willing to call him average from the game last week. 288 yards passing, that's great. 67%, that's fine too. Threw 2 touchdown passes, but had a hat trick of interceptions in the passing game as well, and really is not much of a threat to run the football, or certainly wasn't in that game. As a matter of fact, he had virtually no run support from the Red Blacks on the offensive side. I think they only attempted 12 carries in the game. I think what's the most frustrating here is the Red Blacks had a shot at this game. They recovered an onside kick very late in that game. They had an opportunity with the football, and then Will Arndt throws another interception, his 3rd of the day, on his 42nd pass attempt. And you really shouldn't be forcing your rookie quarterback to throw the ball 42 times. Even if the run game is not doing much early in the game, you got to stick with it. You got to commit to it. Even if you don't have a lead back, you've got to commit to it and at least make the effort. 12 carries in the run of a game, to me, does not scream effort. Long story short, I'm glad he got the start. I hope he gets another one, but they didn't exactly put him in a position to succeed. Meanwhile, the 12-3 Ticats, winners of 3 consecutive games, coming off of a huge win just before their bye week, 42-12 over the Edmonton Eskimos. A fantastic 60-minute performance from the Hamilton Tiger Cats. This team is playoff ready. It was a clean game for Dane Evans, 277 yards passing on 75%, threw 2 touchdowns, did not throw a pick. Clean game for him. And the running back combination of Sutton and Bennett combining for 15 carries and $125 on the ground. On the defensive side, 5 sacks, 2 pass knockdowns, 3 interceptions off of Logan Kilgore in that game. They held the Eskimos to just 320 total yards of offense, taking just 4 penalties on the defensive side. Complete, utter, dominating performance. The kind of game I think you can expect to see from the Ticats straight through the playoffs. Now, you know how I mentioned in the last game that this is back-to-back road games for Saskatchewan, and that would be a big deal if Mike Riley was playing? This is also back-to-back road games for the Red Blacks, and it's just one on the top of the pile of a plethora of reasons why they will not win this football game. I obviously am on the Hamilton Ticats in this one in a big bad way. Hamilton will roll in their own building. Hamilton could play their backups, and I think they'll still roll in this game. Let's take the Ticats over the Red Blacks. On the line, Hamilton is laying 17.5 points against the spread. And it's so many points, and I'm going to hold the nose a little bit because in the second half, who knows, they may start sitting some starters. I'm going to lay those points because I don't think Ottawa's going to do anything. Like, I don't think they're going to do anything at all on the offensive side. This is an offense that still only scored 21 points on the Argos last week. So what are they going to do on arguably the best defense in the East? No, not arguably. Easily the best defense in the East Division. I've got to lay the 17.5. Hold the nose a little bit because it's just so many points. But lay the 17.5. Hamilton minus 17.5. Total in the game set at 51 points. I've only got this game at a high 40 because I don't know that Ottawa reaches double digits in this game. So we're going to stick under on this one. I don't think the game gets to 50. So we're going to go under 51 points in Hamilton, Ottawa. And the last game we're going to look at this week sees the Winnipeg Blue Bombers travel to Calgary to take on the Stamps. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I think this is easily the game of the week at this point. This is two 10-win football teams who are destined for the playoffs, probably destined to potentially meet in the playoffs. So these are two teams that obviously have their aspirations set very high. Winnipeg at 10-6, 35-24 victory last week against Montreal. That game was in Winnipeg. This was a tight game until the Bombers defense generated those 4 interceptions in the second half off of Vernon Adams, turned the tide in that game, and kept pace in the West Division. This was, however, another mediocre game at the quarterback position from Chris Streveler. He only threw for 174 yards on just 60% passing. He did have a passing touchdown, but had 2 interceptions in the pass game and really didn't do a whole hell of a lot on the ground either. This was a game where the quarterback was saved by not only the defense, but once again, of course, Andrew Harris. 24 carries, a $166 on the ground, and a rush touchdown. This offense obviously still needs work, and it's more than just the quarterback position. They had 4 turnovers in this football game. There's a lot of work that the offensive side needs to do. Andrew Harris fumbled a couple of times, I believe, but they showed in this game a championship-level defense across the board. 4 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles in that game against Montreal. They knocked down 5 Vernon Adams passes, allowing only 335 total yards of offense. If Winnipeg can come up with defensive performances like that down the stretch and into the playoffs, this is going to be a tough out. The Stamps, meanwhile, winning that aforementioned 2-point game at home against Saskatchewan last week, 30-28, in a game defined by the Stampeders' ability to finish, their ability to pull out those critical scoring plays exactly when the game flow dictated that they needed them. Calgary scored 13 of their points in that game on what I call next drive points. So you had Saskatchewan put points on the board. The very next drive, Calgary also puts points on the board, at least as many, if not more. 13 of Calgary's 30 points were what I would call next drive points. And that's a way that it's like a boa constrictor. That's the way you just squeeze the life out of your opponent. You never allow them to rest on their laurels because you're always immediately putting up points right after they do. And worth noting, because I've kind of been riding him a little bit, Bo Levi Mitchell delivering his first multi-touchdown game where he also threw more touchdowns than he did interceptions since, get this, week 3 of this season. I realize he missed a lot of games due to injury, but again, this is his first game since week 3 where he threw more than 1 touchdown and also threw fewer interceptions than he did throw touchdowns in a single game. First time since week 3. Once again, this is easily the game of the week for me, a game that both of these teams feel that they need to win because, again, right now it's all about getting that bye or getting that home playoff game. This is a game that neither one of these teams can particularly afford to lose. But I look at these two teams top to bottom and I think, I don't know that Winnipeg can necessarily count on another 3 to 4 late interceptions to really, kind of put this game away. And the Calgary Stampeders are a better overall football team than the Montreal Alouettes are. So if Winnipeg doesn't get that kind of turnaround in the second half, do they necessarily keep pace with this Calgary team? games in Calgary, I mean, I've got to go with the Stamps. I think the Stamps are 7-1 at home this season. I know I have it at 6-2, and Winnipeg's not exactly a great road team either. So I mean, you got to take Calgary in Calgary here. Let's take the Stamps in Calgary to beat Winnipeg. On the line, however, the Stamps are laying a full touchdown. Calgary -7 at home, and I just think that's too many points. These are two offenses that are not exactly lighting the world on fire right now. I mean, Winnipeg's scoring less than 20 points a game over their last 4. I think Calgary's only scoring something like, I have it in my notes, over the last 4. Calgary's only scoring 22 a game. So neither one of the two offenses are really playing incredibly well. These are two defenses, however, that are more than capable of playing well. So I think I got to take those points there, and we're going to take Winnipeg +7. On the line, the total in the game is set at 50.5. It's another game like the previous one where I've only got it into the high 40s. Don't think the game reaches 50, so it's a little bit of a lean, but we're going to lean under on this one and go under 50.5 points in Calgary, Winnipeg. There you go, folks. Those are your Week 19 picks in the CFL for the 2019 season. I guess it's the Champagne Week, isn't it? Week 19 of the 19 season. Going to go over the picks here with you one more time. I've got Montreal at home beating the Toronto Argos, and we're going to lay 10.5 points on the favored Alouettes in a game that goes over 53 points. I've got the Saskatchewan Roughriders in British Columbia beating the Lions, and we are going to lay 7 points on the favored Riders in a game that goes over 47. I got the Hamilton Ticats at home beating up on the Ottawa REDBLACKS, and we are laying 17.5 points on the favored Hamilton Ticats in a game that stays under 51. And the Calgary Stampeders at home, we've got them beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but we're hedging our bets in that one, and we are going to take Winnipeg +7 against the spread in a game that stays under 50.5 points. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees, and fueled by my apologetic feelings for the fact that this episode was, 5-6 hours late, certainly more than what we're used to. Hopefully everything will be back to normal, next week, but this week, again, everything got smushed together because of the holiday. I hope everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I hope your batteries are recharged, because we got Halloween, and then we are careening recklessly into the Christmas season. So for all my retail people, I feel you. I hope you enjoy the games in Week 19. We'll see you again for Week 20.